Sculpting has got to be one of the coolest art forms in the world. The fact that some people can create such beautiful things from their imaginations alone is truly incredible. Some sculptures are so mind-blowing that you just have to clap. These are cool sculptures you won't believe actually exist. Number 15. Incredible Sculptures by Chad Knight. Chad Knight is an artist who's based in Portland, Oregon, and his artworks have created such a kerfuffle as people try to find out the locations of his sculptures. Knight, an ex-pro skateboarder, is now an artist whose work has grabbed headlines for its extraordinary depictions of colossal figures in natural landscapes. He's so prolific, in fact, that he uploads new work almost daily. But how can you construct these huge-scale sculptures so frequently, one may ask? Well, sorry to break it to you, but they aren't real. They are art, but they aren't the art that you think that they are. What? These sculptures actually don't exist, is what I'm saying. These are hyper-real digital drawings. Now I know it's actually incredible because they look so very convincing that there have been whole loads of people out there searching for the sculptures in the real world. From massive sculptural humans that are swimming through the desert landscapes to epic-sized figures emerging from the ocean. These are all carefully rendered digital creations, and in some ways, that's kind of a shame, because just imagine what they'd look like in real life. Before we go on, like this video, smash the subscribe button, and click the notification bell right now, or this centipede will crawl on your face when you're sleeping. Number 14. Hippo Sculptures in Taipei. In the Instagram age, everyone's always looking for a good picture, and it doesn't get much better than this massive creative sculpture. These extraordinary hippos are a favorite amongst visitors to Taipei Zoo. They may look as though they've escaped from an enclosure, but these funny characters are just really lifelike sculptures. They appear to be wallowing in the paved area of this zoo, swimming throughout the cobbles. Now, perhaps the best thing about the hippos is the way they've been installed. Such a natural position of each of the sculptures really makes you do a double take because they just look so real. And this is definitely the safest way to get up close to the famously dangerous and grumpy animals. I doubt that anyone would be encouraging their toddler to clamber aboard a real-life hippo or pose in its yawning mouth for a holiday snap. Number 13. Calgary's Wonderland Sculpture. Something about sculpture in a public space just seems to bring out people's natural curiosities. Interaction with a large-scale work of art is such a different experience than looking at a painting hanging on a wall in a gallery. The Wonderland sculpture in Calgary, Canada, is a massive 40-foot tall piece of public art right in the city center. A work of a Spanish sculptor who's known for his large-scale sculptural works often depicts human heads in thought-provoking postures. These works can be found in major cities all over the world, inspiring conversation and interaction with the pieces. The remarkable thing about this type of public art, though, is just how many people can potentially get to see it. It costs nothing to visit on the usual basis, and there aren't any security guards to tell you not to touch it. It doesn't matter how old you are or even where you come from. Modeled on a little girl from the artist's home country of Spain, Wonderland is said to represent the architecture of the human body, and in particular, the palace of our dreams. The wire mesh material that it's made from allows the sculpture to kind of blend into the environment that it's in. You can see it, but you can also see through it. Oh, and you can also walk through it as well. There are two key entryways at the base of the sculpture, so members of the public can look inside and perhaps take a moment or two to wonder at things. Perhaps it's about how there's something a tiny bit creepy about standing inside the giant head of a little girl. Well, it is pretty cool, and just look at how awesome it looks all lit up at night. Number 12. Karma, the sculpture stretches to infinity. Now, this incredible sculpture is kinda messing with my head, because apparently it's only 23 feet high, but it looks like it stretches all the way into infinity. Karma is a stainless steel construction created by Korean artist Do-Ho Seo. It depicts 98 human figures all hunched and crouching upon the shoulders of the one below, and despite its endless appearance, it's actually a super clever use of an optical illusion and angles. Each figure actually decreases in size slightly as it reaches toward the sky. Apart from the obvious awesome optics of the crazy sculptural installation, you have to ask, what's it all really about? And that would be a good question. The artist seems to like putting pieces of art into the world with very little additional information, and that leaves a good deal of it up to the interpretation of the audience. So what do you think? These crouching figures each cover the eyes of the figure below, blinding them, and one theme which has been present in Do-Ho Seo's art has been the idea of connectivity between the individual and the group, and they do look pretty cool as well, don't they? Number 11. Travelers. These amazing gravity-defying sculptures have a deeply unsettling feeling around them. I feel a little bit haunted now. Bruno Catalano is a French sculptor who has lived a pretty nomadic life. His own personal history has massively influenced the way that his work represents the ideas of traveling, journeying, migration, and on the other side of that idea, a sense of home. He creates these extraordinary cast bronze artworks which depict people, life-size and lifelike, each carrying a single suitcase. But these people all have huge sections of their bodies missing as well. The suitcases act as both a practical support. These pieces of luggage are the only support for the sculpture, but also seeming to weigh the figure down. Travelers is a series of sculptural works which appear in symbolic locations, mainly around France. They were originally designed for Marseille during the city's 2013 stint as European Capital of Culture. The sculptures were placed along the waterfront, a particularly poignant and moving reminder of the migration of millions across the world as they're displaced by conflict, poverty, and climate change. These figures may come from a personal feeling the artist has about the nature of travel, but they also speak to us all in these difficult days of borders and barriers. Number 10. Freedom. This spooky sculpture sits out front of the GlaxoSmithKline corporate headquarters in Philadelphia in the United States, presumably giving everyone on their way to work a feeling that they might just want to bust out and make a bid for freedom. Created in 2000 by sculptor Zinos Froudakis, Freedom depicts a figure, or series of figures, in various stages of being trapped in a wall and gradually being released until the final figure appears separately and free. The artist is said to have produced this piece based on the idea of the universal human need to break free from a situation or an internal struggle, that desire for freedom that's bubbling beneath the surface in us all. There is some irony in the fact that this is a piece of art positioned at a corporate facility, as the workplace is so often the very location that people are wishing to break free from. But there you go. Art will do that to you. Once you do get up close to this particular piece, you'll see that there are actually loads of other things going on. The figures stand out as the center of the installation, but there are lots of smaller details within the large wall part of the sculpture. It's these little details that add the artist's own personal story to artwork. Hidden in the touchable surface of the background are faces, which are frankly kinda super spooky. There are small figures and body parts, words scratched into the surface, and cast bronze tools. It's kind of a biography of the artist, asking a whole lot of questions in the process. What do you think of this sculpture? Sorta gives me the creeps. Number 9. Albert Zukalski's Last Supper. Looking like a lineup of the least imaginative Halloween costumes, Albert Zukalski's Last Supper is possibly one of the creepiest sculptures out there, and that's kinda saying something. As you approach the Goldwell Open Air Museum in Beatty, Nevada, you're greeted by this terrifying vision of ghostly figures. Depending on your own particular disposition, these creeps might actually fascinate you or even terrify you. There's something so Grim Reaper-esque about this weird sculptural piece, but it does attract visitors, enough to warrant a collection of unusual artworks in the middle of a desert, in fact. The plaster sculptures are arranged in a similar fashion to the figures in the famous Da Vinci painting of the Last Supper, but that's really where the similarities end. When you look a little bit closer, it's immediately apparent that these shapes are not figures at all, but just empty cloaks in the forms of people. This is a really eerie sight, especially that it's in Death Valley. These hooded shapes are distinctly menacing as they wait your arrival, just like Death himself. Number 8. Porsche Sculpture at Goodwood Festival. Looking like something between a fairground ride and a car kebab, this is the kind of sculpture that makes you wonder why. Created for the Goodwood Festival of Speed in 2018, this massive sculptural piece is the brainchild of Jerry Judah, a British artist and sculptor known for his architectural style and high-impact work, and this spiky Porsche tree is no exception. Obviously, nobody expects the fancy folk at the Goodwood Festival to shy away from the ostentatious, but this sculpture is crazy. Consisting of a big spike that measures 170 feet tall with a kind of mace on the top, the spikes of which have 6 actual real-life working Porsche cars on them on the ends. This extraordinary skinny pole actually supports the weight of 6 vehicles, about 6 tons by the way, but it also involves all kinds of clever engineering and stabilizers. I guess, though, that these people were confident that all the sums had been added up properly before they hoisted a whole heap of priceless vehicular history into the air. If only they'd figured out how to turn it into a fair ride. That would beat the teacups for sure, and I'd probably puke a lot less. Number 7. The Guggenheim Spider. It's not an alien invasion, but it could be mistaken for one. Just imagine if there were aliens that look like that. Gives me the heebie-jeebies. This epic sculpture would be created by legendary artist Louise Bourgeois, a tribute to her mother, who was a weaver, like the spider, and the piece is named Maman, which is French for mummy. It is in pride of place outside of the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao in northern Spain, contrasting with the crazy shape of the art gallery itself and giving visitors a slightly spooky welcome. I kind of love it, but what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Built out of metal, the giant spider looms over you, and if you take a look underneath, you might spot the sack of marble eggs tucked underneath its body. That's totally creepy. Bourgeois created many pieces of art based on spiders throughout her long life, and this one would be created in the late 90s and is amongst the largest of her works. There's something equally terrifying and protective about the massive leggy monster. Standing underneath it is intimidating in a sci-fi movie imagination kind of way, but at the same time, you can kind of feel the artist's fascination and warmth towards the spider. Awesome in every respect. Number 6. The Runner Sculpture in Athens. Now, how do you build something massive that stays still but appears to also move? Well, maybe by piling huge shards of glass on top of each other to create the humongous form of a running figure. It's not what immediately springs to mind, but the clever creative mind behind the runner sculpture in Athens, Greece came up with a unique way to show movement in his work. Sitting in the center of a busy roundabout, the runner by Kostas Vorotsas is made entirely of dark green glass. It would be moved to the city center location when work began on a subway beneath its original spot because it was feared that the rumblings beneath might dislodge the super heavy work of art. And nobody wants a giant glass sculpture tumbling down and smashing all over the place, now do they? Just imagine the cleanup. This 12-meter-tall sculpture took the artist 6 entire years to complete. It would be constructed by basically piling huge, jagged sheets of glass up one on top of another, so that when they're all assembled, the effect is of a figure that's actually running. It looks a bit like the kind of blur effect you get in a photograph if you don't have a special setting to capture fast-moving objects. The much-loved artwork is designed to be viewed from all sides, and by people who are also moving around it. This means that either in traffic or in bustling crowds, you see the same effect from every angle. What do you think of the big guy? Number 5. Big Papa. Now, your eyes are not deceiving you. That's a stretchy sculpture. Felix Semper is a Cuban-American artist who uses paper in ways that you never knew was possible. This sculpture, called Big Papa, was inspired by the famous final portrait of the notorious B.I.G. Semper created a version of Biggie wearing a crown in homage to the image. The artist uses hundreds upon hundreds of layers of paper, which have been strategically glued so as to appear solid and then carefully carved to create a bust of the subject. The kooky thing about the sculpture, though, is that it can be manipulated and stretched, and twisted and elongated, a bit like a supercharged slinky. This piece of art, although it's made of paper, also weighs 66.5 pounds. Semper says that he likes to incorporate everyday materials into his work, transforming the media from appearing to be a solid sculpture into a mind-bending stretchable material. He also likes to show his work in the street, giving the public an opportunity to engage with artworks outside of the traditional gallery environment. These are fascinating objects and they draw a crowd just by novelty alone. But it really must take a lot of time and patience to glue all that paper so neatly. This is taking origami to another level, and hopefully this artwork doesn't get in a tangle as easily as a slinky, because that could become expensive. Number 4. The Bather. When a gigantic woman popped up in Hamburg's Inner Alster Lake back in 2011, it caused quite a bit of a stir amongst the locals. The sculpture, named Die Badende, which translates to The Bather, was a slightly comical depiction of a woman's head and knees who appears to be taking a bath in the middle of the lake. Many people were so intrigued by this slightly bonkers installation that they took boats out to have a closer look. The enormous artwork peeped out of the water to a full 13 feet, but in total actually measured 67 feet long, weighing more than 2 tons. Now that's one big lady. Although the massive sculpture appeared to be some sort of artistic centerpiece, it was not actually displayed during a wacky art exhibition in Hamburg. It was just an attention-seeking advertising stunt by British cosmetics company Soap and Glory. Designed to draw attention to the company's bathing products, the Bather also drew a little negative attention during her soak in the lake. The city's mayor was less than impressed by the monstrous megalith, accusing the structure of sullying the beloved lake. But just how effective was this as an advertising campaign is really anyone's guess. The giant woman was no doubt a little prune-fingered by the time she was hoisted out, somewhat unceremoniously by a crane after a fortnight soak in the tub. Number 3. The Statue of Ali and Nino. The story of Ali and Nino is a tragic tale of love by famous Azerbaijan writer Kurban Said. It's about the doomed love between Muslim Ali and Christian Nino, set in the era during the First World War. An artist would create this extraordinary sculpture inspired by the story in 2010 as a symbol of love that overcomes beliefs and borders. Positioned in Georgia's Black Sea resort, Batumi Boulevard, the artwork is an 8-meter-high creation that depicts a man and a woman, being Ali and Nino, and the two still figures are a moving composition. They slowly move together to become one figure and then through one another, repeating the whole movement once every 10 minutes. It's a mighty impressive sight and has become one of the resort's most visited attractions. It's not really hard to see the universal appeal of an artwork that captures one of the most timeless love stories, forbidden love that crosses divides. It's both beautiful and moving, quite literally. Number 2. Stunning fairy sculpture. If you like anime, then these busty fairies might just do it for you. Apparently inspired by the idea that the artist lives in a place where he believes there should be fairies, Robin White created these wire sculptures in response to the natural landscape around him and possible encounter with a fairy in a tree. Oh, and also a passion for anime-style boobs, apparently. The intricately woven and twisted pieces are made entirely of metal, and the shapes are formed in dynamic and whimsical postures. A bit less Tinkerbell when you get up close, and maybe a bit more barbed wire. But these sculptures have also proven to be wildly popular in the posh gardens of people in the UK. So, if you like a little bit of twiddly sculpture in the natural landscape, these fairies are just the job, twirling their way around the dandelion clocks and making agile shapes in the twilight. A touch of magic at the bottom of the garden. You know, if you believe in fairies after all. Number 1. Expansion. Another breast-centric sculpture, but this one comes with a little bit of a message, or that's what the artist says anyway. It's apparently a representation of the human race as a singular individual searching for connection but finding only alienation. All right. Artist Paige Bradley certainly has some lofty ambitions for this sculpture of a cross-legged and bare-naked woman with apparently lightning inside. I don't know if you're representing the entire human race. It's a bit reductive to present literally everyone as a perky-breasted, perfect-bodied, high-cheekboned Caucasian woman, isn't it? But perhaps I just don't get it. Anyway, the addition of lightning inside the figure, which seems to be kind of leaking out of the human into the world, is something to ponder perhaps. But if you have some more ideas about it, I'd love to know about them in the comments below. Are there any public sculptures near where you live that you love? Next time that you're near a big, weird outdoor sculpture, go have a closer look and let your creative mind wander a bit. Also, check out our other cool stuff showing up on the screen right now, and I'll see you next time.